Scene 1. Tonight the hunt takes an unexpected turn, plunging two worlds of darkness into a single, violent collision. We bridge the gap between the sleek, gothic horror of the Underworld and the hyper-stylized, techno-organic combination of the Blade anime and movie. This is a world where the vampire clans of Victor and the lichen hordes of Lucian have never encountered the daywalker like Eric Brooks. Here, a blood magic ritual of Deacon Frost's schemes will tear a hole in reality, dragging Blade into Celine's eternal war. It is a conflict where two distinct species of vampire, one born of ancient corruption, the other of viral mutation, will be forced to confront a new kind of predator. The timeline is set during the first Underworld film, with Celine hunting lichens, and Blade is fresh from his anime-stylized reality, a sword-wielding force of nature about to redefine the meaning of a monster. Scene 2. The air itself felt like it was dying. A crimson fog, thick and cloying like infected blood, hung over the abandoned industrial complex, fed by the shimmering runes of an apparent blood magic ritual. Blade moved through it like a shark, his long coat whispering against the concrete. He'd tracked Deacon Frost here, but the vampire lord had sent his new pets to play. These were modified, non-pure vampire. They were mutations, their bodies bulging with grafted tissue and unstable ichor. A UV grenade spun from his hand, erupting in a silent, searing flash of white. The modified vampires, caught in the blast, shrieked, their skin sloughing off in clouds of orange embers and gray ash, their skeletons crumbling to the floor. But one, a massive creature with stony gray, bat-like wings, had launched itself into the rafters at the last second. It let out a guttural roar and crashed through a high window, shards of glass raining down. Blade's eyes, hidden behind his signature shades, tracked its trajectory. This creature was going to lead him to his master. With a burst of enhanced speed, he leaped for the shattered window, his gloved hand finding purchase on the sill as he swung himself out into the night, giving chase to the fleeing gargoyle. Scene 3. The gargoyle landed with a ground-shaking thud on a high catwalk, its claws scraping sparks against the rusted metal. It stood before a massive steel door, its posture defensive. Behind that door, a low, ominous hum vibrated through the structure, and a powerful vortex of air was being sucked in through every crack and seam, creating a low, constant whistle. The creature was the last line of defense, and it knew it. As Blade landed silently behind it, the gargoyle spun, its maw unhinging to reveal rows of needle-sharp teeth as it lunged for a devastating bite. But Blade had no time for games. He didn't dodge so much as flow to the side, his movements a blur of preternatural grace. In the same fluid motion, the adamantium silver blade of his sword, a weapon forged to slay the undead, sang through the air. The cut was impossibly clean. The gargoyle's momentum carried it forward as its torso separated from its legs. For a split second, surprise was frozen on its mutated face before its body erupted into a cloud of orange embers and gray ashes, coating the edge of Blade's sword in a fine, sparkling dust. He gave the remains a cursory glance, then stepped through the settling cloud, his focus entirely on the door that now stood unguarded. Scene 4. With a powerful thrust, Blade kicked the heavy door open. It slammed against the wall with a deafening clang. The room beyond was a chamber of arcane power. At its center stood Deacon Frost, his back partially turned, his signature white trench coat with its yellow borders looking stark against the crimson energy that filled the space. His short blonde hair was flapping in the wind, and as he glanced over his shoulder, his yellow eyes gleamed with triumph. Beside him, a portal of swirling blood-red energy pulsed and churned, a wound in the very fabric of the world. The vortex, that had been sucking air from outside, was nothing compared to the pull from this thing. It tugged at Blade's black coat, trying to drag him in as he dug his heels in, his sword planted into the concrete floor for leverage. "Blade," Frost's voice echoed, laced with condescending amusement. "So persistent. But I'm afraid your invitation is for another party." He gestured to the portal. "You're too late to stop me now. The answers I need aren't in this world." He gave a final, contemptuous smirk. "I'm going to find them in another." With that, he turned and stepped backward into the swirling red maw, his form dissolving into the chaos as the portal's energy flared, threatening to consume everything in the room. Scene 5. The portal flared one last time before beginning to collapse in on itself, the violent suction transforming into a powerful drawing pull. Blade strained against it, his sword screeching against the floor as he fought to stay anchored. Frost was gone. To another world. The thought was insane, a violation of every law of nature Blade understood. But he'd seen the blood magic, felt the dimensional tear. He didn't know where Frost had gone, what new monsters or unsuspecting innocents he would find to exploit. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever the Vampire Lord was planning, it could not be good. Deacon Frost was a plague, and a plague couldn't be allowed to spread to a new, uninfected host. The pull became unbearable. With a final, decisive grunt, Blade pulled his sword free and stopped fighting. He let the vortex take him, his body rocketing toward the shrinking red light. He didn't know what enemies, what horrors, awaited him on the other side. He only knew his duty. As the world dissolved into a tunnel of red, he gripped his sword tighter, a predator willingly leaping into the unknown to continue his eternal hunt. Scene 6. In a crumbling, rain-slicked square in the heart of a decaying Eastern European city, the sharp crack of a pistol shot echoed off ancient stone walls. Selene lowered her gleaming chrome firearm, the barrel smoking in the cold air. The lichen she'd been tracking for the past hour crumpled to the cobblestones, its headless body twitching before finally stilling. Another one down, another victory for the death dealer. But as she stood there in the silence, the familiar rush of the hunt was replaced by a strange, creeping sensation. A weariness that had nothing to do with physical exhaustion settled into her bones. It was a feeling of intrusion, a subtle but profound wrongness that prickled at the edge of her enhanced senses. It wasn't a sound or a smell or a sight. It was a feeling, like a sudden drop in atmospheric pressure before a storm. Her mind immediately went to the lichens. Had they found a new weapon? Some type of CERN technology, perhaps? The air itself seemed to hum with a low, foreign frequency, as if her very world was being probed, its skin brushed by an unseen hand. Her instincts, honed over centuries of war, screamed that something was coming. Scene 7, and then she saw it. At the far end of the square, the air began to shimmer and distort. It started as a ripple, like heat haze on a summer day, but in the cold, wet night, it was impossibly wrong. The distortion deepened, the colors bleeding away until a swirling vortex of deep blood red erupted into existence. The world around it was instantly painted in its hellish glow, the shadows deepening to black, the rain appearing to sizzle as it neared the portal's edge. The strange weariness Selene felt intensified, focusing into a point of origin at that crimson tear in reality. A new weapon from the lichens. It had to be. Perhaps some dark sorcery unearthed from the old texts, a forbidden spell to breach their sanctuaries. She ejected the spent magazine from her pistol and slammed a fresh one home with practiced ease, her face a mask of cold determination. Whatever it was an intrusion into her world, a potential threat to the coven. She couldn't wait for it to come to her. Breaking into a fluid, powerful run, Selene sprinted across the slick cobblestones, her black leather coat billowing behind her, her weapons ready, charging straight toward the unknown. Scene 8. The world lurched, colors and sounds twisting into a nauseating blur before solidifying with a violent jolt. Blade landed hard on one knee, his sword point digging into the damp, ancient stonework to steady himself. The blood-red portal hissed and crackled behind him, a final angry surge of energy before snapping shut with a deafening clap of thunder, leaving only the lingering smell of ozone and copper in the air. He took a moment, his senses reeling. He lifted his head, pushing himself back to his full height, his coat heavy with the damp. This earth was different. The air was cold and wet, carrying the scent of old stone, moss, and the faint coppery tang of blood, fresh blood. The sounds were alien too, the lapping of water against ancient foundations, the distant howl of something large and angry, and an unsettling, all-encompassing silence where the hum of a modern city should have been. It felt older here, more primal. He couldn't sense Frost's unique, corrupted, vampiric scent anywhere nearby, but he could feel the weight of unseen eyes on his back, the presence of predators lurking just beyond the edge of his perception. He had no idea what enemies this new world held, but he knew one thing. He was a long way from home. Scene 9. Blade didn't have to wait long for an introduction. A guttural snarl ripped through the night air, and a massive, hulking shape exploded from the shadows of a collapsed archway. It was a lichen, but unlike any he'd seen. This was no modified vampire. It was a pure, bestial nightmare, a hulking, bipedal wolf with matted black fur, glowing yellow eyes, and a mouthful of teeth designed to crush bone. It saw only a vampire, the pale skin and predatory aura, marking Blade as an enemy in its simple, rage-filled mind. With a earth-shaking leap, it lunged, claws extended for a killing strike. But the lichen had never faced a daywalker. Its claws raked through empty air as Blade flowed to the side with contemptuous ease. In the same heartbeat, the adamantium silver sword was off his back and singing through the air in a horizontal arc. The blade, impossibly sharp and imbued with the lichen's deadliest weakness, cleaved through fur, muscle, and bone as if it were paper. The two halves of the beast slammed into the ground on either side of him, dissolving into black ichor and ash. Blade didn't even break his stride. He slid the sword back into its sheath on his back with a soft click. "Well," he said to the empty, silent night, his voice a low, gravelly murmur. "New world, same old vermin, already trying to give me fleas." Scene 10. Blade continued his advance, his senses on high alert. He moved with a predator's stealth, sticking to the shadows as he navigated the ruins, his only goal to find a trail, a clue, anything that would lead him to Frost. But he knew he wasn't alone. They were good. He'd give them that. Their movements were almost silent, their scents mingling with the ancient decay of the city. Two of them flanking him, one high in the shattered remains of a bell tower to his left, the other crouched in the skeletal frame of a cart to his right. Shadows within shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike, their heavy breathing and the subtle scrape of claws on stone the only tells. They were pack hunters, patient and confident. They saw a lone vampire, perhaps a stray from a rival clan, an easy kill. They had no idea they were stalking a hunter who had made a career out of turning the tables on monsters. Blade's hand rested casually on the hilt of his sword, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching his lips. They wanted to play. He was more than happy to oblige. Let them watch. Let them plan. It would make their surprise all the more educational. Scene 11. The air tensed, coiled like a spring about to snap. From the shadows on his left and right, Blade sensed the two lichens preparing to launch their simultaneous assault. His hand tightened on the hilt of his sword, muscles coiling to spin and cleave them both out of the air in one devastating arc. But before he could move, the night erupted with the sharp, rhythmic crack, crack, crack of high-caliber pistol fire. From atop a crumbling building to his left, a figure clad in sleek black leather stood silhouetted against the moon. Muzzle flashes strobed from her chrome pistols, each shot perfectly placed. The lichen crouched in the cart to his right, let out a choked yelp as a silver bullet tore through its skull, its body tumbling lifelessly to the ground. The one in the bell tower took 2 rounds to the chest. Its howl cut short as it lost its grip and plummeted, landing with a sickening crunch on the cobblestones below. Blade straightened, watching the 2 threats dissolve into ash and ichor. Impressive. No, more than impressive. The precision, the timing, the complete lack of hesitation. This was a professional. He turned slightly to face the mysterious woman, a hint of grudging respect on his face. But the fight wasn't over. As the shooter ejected a spent magazine, a massive lichen, larger than the others, hauled itself onto the roof behind her, its claws scraping against the stone as it prepared to pounce on the unsuspecting woman. Blade didn't call out a warning. He didn't need to. In one fluid motion, his hand dipped into his long coat and emerged with a silver stake, its tip gleaming in the pale light. With a flick of his wrist, he sent it spinning through the air like a dart. The stake flew true, burying itself deep in the lichen's chest, piercing its heart. The beast froze, a look of shock on its monstrous face, before dropping like a sack of potatoes, its body convulsing once, before dissolving into a pile of foul-smelling ash. Scene 12. Silence descended on the square once more, broken only by the gentle patter of rain and the faint hiss of dissolving lichen remains. The woman on the roof holstered one pistol, the barrel of the other still smoking as she calmly, deliberately aimed it at the stranger below. Blade, for his part, simply reached up and adjusted his sunglasses, pushing them more firmly onto the bridge of his nose, a gesture of calm defiance. He made no move for his weapons. He simply watched her, a faint, unreadable expression on his hard features. Selene studied him from her vantage point. He was a vampire, clearly. The hidden eyes, the way he moved, the strength evident in his frame, all unmistakable. But he was wrong. Different. His scent was strange, his clothes were strange, and that sword, she'd never seen a vampire wield a blade like that. He moved like a death dealer, but he dressed like a vagabond. And he'd just saved her life. Or at least, saved her the effort of killing that last lichen herself. She leaped down from the roof, landing with cat-like grace on the wet stones, her weapon never wavering from his chest. She closed the distance until she was only a few meters away, her icy blue eyes narrowing as she searched his face. The barrel of her pistol, still warm from the shots, pointed directly at his heart. Her voice, when it came, was low, controlled, and carried the cold authority of a woman who had survived centuries by asking the right questions. "Who are you?"